but the point is, you cannot repeat it. A specified event is an event that repeats itself, and so you will not have it happen again. That's the point. That's where you have the word specified. It has already happened, or it has a. That's why we say that this with a house and blowing bricks and like that. House has already happened. It's a particular function. It exists independently of the explosion of the bricks, and that these two coincide is too small so it will ever happen by any reasonable chance. So anyway, I hope. It's not so complicated for those who have simple mathematical brains. This is simple stuff.
We have faith in you.
Yeah, and the rest have faith.
But how many times do you say that the Big Bang has happened?
We only know one Big Bang, if that's what happened. And that doesn't, even if it happens other places, that doesn't change the probability within this universe global.
Normally in science we say that anybody who reads science says that if the conditions are same, the results are same, right?
Yeah.
So that means that if Big Bang is happening somewhere else, there should be another Earth after 10 or 127 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, they have some argument called the multiverse theory.
Yeah.
And I'll get back. Okay, you asked about that, and let me just finish this, and I'll get back to it. I'll get back to this because they tried out that. So just to compare this, if you talk about biology, back to biology, living organisms, cells, are composed of, to a large degree, of amino acids or proteins. Proteins are very essential in organisms, in cells. And so if life should have started by chance, some other proteins should have assembled themselves by chance. That's one possibility. Mm-hmm. So proteins are chains of molecules called amino acids, and there are 20 different amino acids linked up in long chains, like, for example, 200 amino acids long. This is not very long, actually. So that means, let's imagine if you just by chance assemble chains of proteins with, or a protein that is 200 amino acids long. What's the chance for getting one particular protein or amino acid sequence out? It's not difficult to calculate. You have each place that's 20 different possible amino acids, and since it's 200 places, it's 20 multiplied by itself 200 times, which is, again, you write it like this, 20 to the 200, which is approximately 10 to the 260, 10 with 260 zeros after, which means that actually we're dealing with a much bigger number, much bigger figure than the figure for the universal probability bound. You see that? Compare these. This is much. 1 out of 10 with 260 zeros after. It's a much smaller figure than the universal probability bound that we found. It's 100 zeros less than that. So actually, when you look at biology, the chances there for this happening by chance is not. There simply has not been enough time in the universe for this to happen. Just for one protein, the most simple cells need 200 proteins at least to function. But just for one protein to assemble like that, there's not. So it's just to give an idea that actually anything cannot just happen by chance, even given enough time. And we do not. Of course, if you have enough time, but we do not have enough time. Earth is supposed to have been 4.5 billion years old, universe 14.5 billion years old. It's not enough time. And so, here's one physicist, Paul Davies, who writes that there are indeed a lot of stars, at least 10 billion in the observable universe, But this number, gigantic as it may appear to us, is nevertheless trivially small compared to the gigantic odds against the random assembly of even a single protein molecule. So that's, and you can get into a little more intricate and complicated statistical calculations, but this is just to give you an idea. There's statistics against evolution actually. Here's another one, and kind of it's related, it's somewhat related, and you can hear that as an argument, even if you can prove statistics like that. But then you just see, but evolution is a fact. It's already a proven fact. So whether it happened this way or that way, but it's a fact. There's so much evidence. It's a fact. For example, this is a comment from one evolutionary biologist, Ernst Mayr. He actually reacted in 1900, and I think it was 66. There was a conference in America, a place called the Wistar Institute. It's an institute connected with the institute in the University in Philadelphia. And they had a conference called Mathematical Challenges of the Neo-Darwinian Interpretation of Evolution, where some leading mathematicians met with evolutionary biologists. And the mathematicians, they were arguing, and they were presenting calculations that life is simply too complex, and they were saying the eye is simply too complex, and there's not been enough time, and there cannot be enough mutations for the eye to evolve gradually in the history of life on Earth. So they were sending many calculations like that, and asking biologists, so what do you say? So this was Ernst Mayr's comment. He said, somehow or other, by adjusting these figures, we will come out all right. We are comforted by the fact that evolution has occurred. Yeah. So that was his. He had he couldn't argue against it. But he said, but something is wrong with your figures. Evolution is a fact. So your figures, they must be wrong. It's obvious because that's a. So you just have to get calculations right, and you also then we can then you will be more informed than I will. That's what. But he didn't go further. He didn't explain why he thought it was a fact. No evidence. It's just a statement.
It's because when you study science, one gets very afraid if one doesn't get the answers right.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous when you read so many books with so many pages, and suddenly come to the fact that it's not you who's in charge. Yeah. It's somebody else.
Yeah.
And then you don't want to believe.
No. So then you start.
Then you start fixing the numbers.
Yeah.
Not fixing the problem.
Yeah. Or you become bluff and irrational and emotional. It's actually in one sense an emotional response from him, even though he probably tries to have completely, on calm face like that, but he's emotionally disturbed. Yeah. And but convinced. In one sense, he's very convinced. He's also so convinced about that he cannot even see that he doesn't have the evidence. He doesn't have the evidence. So that's you come across that, and when you've come across that, you have to understand. But what makes it a fact? Okay, and then you can even say that I'm just a layman. I'm just a stupid layman. So you're a scientist. So scientists must, we don't accept scientists' statements without proof and evidence. What is your evidence? I'm open. Just show it. And okay, then we're looking at some of this evidence right now. Here's another one. No sensible God would have done it like that. So you come across this. For example, here is this is Stephen Jay Gould, one of the most famous evolutionists in recent years. He died in 2002, I think it was, or 4, but he's quite recent. And he wrote a book where he was also discussing the panda, these cute panda bears. And they have, there's many peculiar traits with them. One peculiar trait is that they actually have 6 fingers. They have, if you can see over here, up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a 6th thumb. And this is called the panda's thumb. And somehow they have this extra thumb. It's practical. It's very practical because they eat bamboo shoots, and they use this thumb. They can grab the bamboo, then they eat the bamboo. So this is very practical. But it turns out that this thumb is not a finger, but it's actually a wrist bone that somehow or other is modified to the shape of the thumb. For some reason, it's not a finger bone; it's a wrist bone. So Poole, he wrote about that odd arrangements and fun solutions are the proof of evolution, past that a sensible God would never tread. No sensible God would create like that, therefore it must be evolution. That's what it is. You know, we're just quoting from a book. He wrote it. Here's another example like that. There are many examples that are inconsistent with the notion that an omnipotent creator who should be able to adhere to an optimal design provided them. This is from a textbook to American universities on evolution. So he's arguing again like that. An omnipotent creator, he should be able to make things perfectly. You know, perfect design. But it's not, so therefore it's cannot be a creator, it must be evolution. What do you think about that?
Well, even if there was to be some kind of flaw, that flaw is perfect because Krishna made it, basically. God is not subject to the opinion of the human.
What do you think? But why did any human engineer could make it better? He wouldn't make things in such a clumsy way.
Sure. Why not?
If he's so much more intelligent, then also his creation should be much more intelligent than what we can produce. So we cannot make things that are so, clumsy and imperfect.
Sure, if that's the purpose. If it's the purpose to make it clumsy for the person who has that body or is going to live that life, if that's the purpose to make it inconvenient for him, then it fills that purpose perfectly.
Then it's about God making inconvenient. Then, God is also all good, but now he's making inconvenience. He actually causes us trouble. That's not an all good God.
It's like a child. If a child does something wrong, then the parent does something maybe the child doesn't like, so that the child understands, okay, this is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're right.
I also think that God has an incredible sense of humor. And look at all the varieties of insects and kinds of birds and species, and it just shows that if you like a person, you actually appreciate the person's qualities, and if you hate that person, you will find fault.
Yeah. I think you're all right, but I like to, when I get this argument, I like to catch them first of all. When you talk about theory of evolution, is it science or is it theology? Because actually this is theology we talk about. You give theological arguments, and it's actually this about that it's not perfect, no sensible God would do like this is theology. So first of all, let's catch them and ask, what are you scientists doing in the world of theology? Are you theologians? What and if it turns out it's a zoologist, he made his PhD on the mating seasons of frogs or something like that. That's fine. We have full respect for that. But does that make him qualified to make theological statements? What is training in theology? And the funny thing about Poole, with the panda thumb, he was very loud about that religion and science must be kept strictly apart. discussions of gods and like that have no place in science. They occupy two completely different realms of reality, and they do not mix, and they can exist. And you would also say that one is, religion has its sphere and science has its sphere, and they should just be in harmony, because religion should stay to its area and science should stay to its area. Science deals with how things they work, and religion deals with greater questions about meaning and value and so on, and they don't overlap. They should, especially religion, they should stay out of science. That's what she's. And but then you find somewhere else, then he starts talking about what God will do and will not do, and become a theologian. So that's contradictory. So that's one point, is that they just discuss the theology. And then the point is, so okay, you want to discuss theology, then discuss, as you did also, is about, they say it's not perfect, but perfect according to what criteria? Perfect means purpose. For example, you might say, you have a gun, you have a real gun, and you have a toy gun. Which is more perfect? Which is a perfect one? And of course you would say, it depends what is the purpose. If it's, the police has to hunt down a Danish criminal, then the real gun is perfect. If it's a birthday present for your little child, then the toy gun is perfect. You have to, it's a purpose related to a person. So then you have to, if you talk about, design and value is not perfect, God wouldn't do like that, then you have to start talking about what is God's purpose. Until you relate it to a purpose, you cannot talk about whether this is perfect design, not perfect design. As you said, God might have a purpose, maybe it's complicated for us. We know this actually, it's like that. It's God has, first of all, is creating a world of illusion. So He has created many things that appear as if He is not here, including what can appear as imperfect design. So we can get bewildered and believe in evolution instead of creation. And also, He didn't create it's not that He wants to create a paradise for us, like a perfect vacation resort like that. No, actually, it's a world of suffering. We get karma like that. So there's built-in suffering into our bodies, and that's perfect. It's made. It's perfect because that is a purpose. So we have to. Then, if you want to discuss theology, you have to catch them on the purpose, and you have anyway. I mean, again, you don't get that far. Because although for us this is very simple, this is ABC for the devotees, but for someone who they have never been that far into a theological discussion, so probably will not be able to catch. Sometimes I do get busy when I'm on the street, and I do sometimes get a chance to speak with someone like that. At least we should be clear about when we see these kind of arguments, we should understand them for what they are. And actually, they're really widespread. They're really widespread. Most of these arguments, actually, as we've seen, all this evidence is actually based on this underlying understanding that God would not have done it like that. Because if God exists, the point is, He could do anything. He could even copy evolution completely. So to exclude that possibility, they have to assume that God will not do it like that. God will not be rational and do it like that. It's not rational for God to do it like that. That means actually they have to be theological in arguing against design like that. If they would give, let's say, real scientific, let's see, I think it stops here. Yeah. If it's if they would tænder for lyset?
Yeah.
Godt. If they would give real scientific evidence for evolution, what they simply will need to do is to show that matter itself can, matter itself can, or life can arise by a material process on its own. If they can demonstrate, like Prabhupada would say, if life comes from chemicals, than just take the chemicals and mix them, go to a laboratory, mix them, produce life, prove that they can arise spontaneously on their own under the natural environment that was there at the early Earth. If you can demonstrate actually life could arise under such natural circumstances, and you just see it happens just like you mix, for example, oxygen and hydrogen. It's a natural process. You get water. You don't need a god to explain how water forms from hydrogen and oxygen. So if you can show like that material processes are sufficient to explain everything about life, then that will be a pretty good, strong case for evolution. Then of course you can say God is still there, but there's no real need to have an intelligent creator to explain what we are finding. But short of that, if they cannot have that, they have no real evidence as Carl was saying. They don't have the proof for it. And rather, as we find it's as science advances day by day, it just becomes more and more obvious. It means it's already obvious. It becomes even more obvious. This cannot arise by any natural process. Biology is a study of the creative sphere.
Even if they were to combine all the chemicals under the right circumstances and then create life, one can still argue that there's a soul separate from this material element in there.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that you can create life. Even though you, so to say, created, doesn't mean that the person didn't come from somewhere else and then enter that.
Yeah. And that should be a topic from one of the next classes. We actually look at consciousness and like that. But if they could explain by natural processes how life arises and how consciousness arises and like that, simply by natural processes, and there's no need to have a soul, there's no evidence of the soul and like that, there's no evidence of a creator, their case would be strong. I mean, I have to admit, you have to also, if you demand proof, you also have to be clear about what is the standard of the proof that we want. And that's very simple. I mean, it's not unreasonable that the standard of proof that we want, and we can state it very clearly. This is what because that's what they're claiming. Darwin claimed that everything in life could be explained by a natural process. Natural process means physics, chemistry, basically. So just demonstrated that all features of a living organism can be the result of a natural process. Show it. If they cannot show it, at least then it's undecided. Then we cannot say it's proven. Then you should just say we don't know. I think they can also say we don't know yet. If it makes them feel comfortable to add the word yet. It doesn't make any, doesn't give more meaning to the sentence, but it gives like a hope in the future. Who knows what's going to happen in the future. Point is, at least we do not know how life could arise by any natural process. And as I say, as biology has advanced, it has just, it becomes more and more obvious that actually this is, the evidence points to creation, to intelligent activity, not to natural process, as we discussed in the previous lectures.
I was just wondering how this information should be used by us as for preaching, because I don't really feel like secure in these fields, but I think it's very nice to get the information, just to have the faith that most science and what they present to the people is actually just bogus. But we should rather point them to people that are actually learned in these fields and to books and stuff like that, rather to try to explain it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's of course, if you cannot explain the details yourself, you can direct them to someone who can. And you can just simply stick to arguments where you cannot, where you have a safe ground. Like Prabhupada's simple challenge is, if life comes from chemicals, and if you're so advanced as a scientist, then take chemicals and make life. That you can ask that, and you just stick to your guns, and you have to insist. You are the one who have to give the proof. It's not that I have to prove it's not possible. It's not like, you are claiming that life is pure chemicals. Show it. Find the chemical, specify what are the chemicals, give a demonstration in the laboratory. That was Prabhupada's challenge. So, unless that is shown, we don't accept anything. So that argument you can definitely, you can, and Prabhupada said, but we only see life come from life. That means actually, that must mean the written life must also come from life. So that you can do, and then direct if they want, to other persons who know better, to literature to argue better. But then also I say, preachers, we should know these arguments. We should get into a certain amount of science also. Like at the time of, for example, Lord Chaitanya, 500 years ago, Mayavad philosophy was dominant. It was at that time, you say the dominant atheistic philosophy, Mayavad philosophy. So devotees got into it. They really knew Mayavad philosophy and how to argue it and how to counter all the Mayavadis' arguments better. They knew Mayavad philosophy better than Mayavadis in many cases, because they had to, if they, for the sake of their own faith probably, and also for the sake of the innocent majority of people, so they are not being misled by false, atheistic propaganda. Atheism takes different forms, and of course, Mayavad philosophy is a spiritual atheism. Today, the prominent form of atheism is materialistic atheism. Very, very, very simplistic. Mayavad philosophy is much more refined and deals with soul and God also. But they're arguing that behind soul and God there is nothing or oneness. And that's much more tricky to argue against in one sense. So, but nowadays a prominent Mayavad philosophy, you can say like that. Prabhupada is here to counter, to fight against impersonalism and voidism. And the most prominent impersonal philosophy is evolution. And scientism in general. Materialism and scientism. Not science. Science is not like Prabhupada and us, we're not against science, we completely we love science like anything. We want more science, not less, we want more science. Science is just a method of, getting sure knowledge. So we're all for that. But scientism is an ideology, it's a worldview connected with materialism. Materialism is a worldview that matter is all there is, and scientism is the idea that science is a process, empirical science is a process to uncover knowledge and again, in one sense, they're very much interlinked to materialism, scientism. That the worldview presented in the name of science today is the true reality. And that becomes scientism. And the scientists become the priests. We just have to believe what they say. Which is not science. Science means actually being skeptical. Science starts with being skeptical, doubting, questioning. Why? Why should we believe this? I want proof, I want evidence.
There must be debates, also public debates on a high level. So with all these evidence, like what are they saying?
No, they're shutting down the